Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the March 7th River Falls Planning Commission meeting. First thing we'll do is stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, let's have a roll call.
Holdcamp,
Here.
LaRue,
Here.
Moody, Odine,
Here.
Prendergast.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have approval of minutes from the February 7th Planning Commission meeting.
I move approval.
Second.
First, second, questions, comments on the minutes?
I have some comments. On the second page at the bottom, right before reports, the paragraph says discussion took place regarding the number of new units recently added in the area and traffic safety. Burns stated that engineering has reviewed the traffic counts and the Paulson Road can handle increased traffic. The discussion, in my mind, was more about the safety between having close to 1,000 people in this area and two developments right across the street from each other and children riding their bikes or running across the street and not going. So I would propose to amend the minutes to add concern for pedestrian safety was raised. Staff will propose enhanced roads crossing.
I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, anybody else have anything?
And then on page 3 of 3, it talks about the Saturday townhomes. It says 90 units, and if I don't think I'm mistaken, it's 190 units. Yeah, okay, so I would also suggest that get amended.
Okay, anybody else have anything? So first we'll vote on her first amendment about the safety.
No, I think since I made the motion, I can accept that as a friendly
Okay.
amendment. If you'll second.
You want, okay,
Second.
okay, you okay with that then?
Yes.
Okay. So all in favor of the approval of the minutes the way they are with the two amendments?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next, move on to public comments. If there's anybody in the audience who has anything they'd like to say. Okay, we'll move on. We'll move on to ordinance and resolutions. The first one is a update to the city's comprehensive plan to replace the 2005 comprehensive plan. It will be a public hearing, but first we're going to have a presentation from our consultant, Stephanie. Right there she is. And then I'll open it up to the public for questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. For the members of the public, my name is Stephanie Falkers. If I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet, I've been working with the city for the last 18 months on a very exciting process to update the comprehensive plan, outdoor recreation plan, and bike and pedestrian plan. And we're at a very exciting time this evening to take action potentially on continuing to move the comprehensive plan forward in the process. So this for you commissioners is a presentation that you've probably seen me give portions of quite a few times, so you can sit back and relax a little bit because we want to make sure that the public that's here gets an understanding of where we're coming from as well. But then we'll talk a little bit through the presentation as well about some of the changes that we've made recently since the last time you saw the plan as a steering committee. So really, I'm just going to focus the conversation there and then into our next steps. So starting back at ground zero, what is a comprehensive plan for the community again? And this is a document that is required by state law or state statutes in order for the city to have a zoning ordinance. So it is our guide for physical, social, and economic development and growth, and needs to create that 20-year vision for future planning and community decisions. State statutes do dictate that it needs to include 9 required elements. It has to be updated they ask that it be updated every 10 years. And again, is that piece of that document that's going to be the guide for our official mapping, subdivision, and zoning actions for the next 20 years. But really, we set out a goal of creating a plan that did a variety of different things here in terms of encouraging smart growth patterns, preserving access to a high quality of life, reviewing all of our city systems. I won't get into the details here, but importantly, we set out a goal of creating a plan that was built from community input and engaging with the community along the way. What was our process? Over the last 18 months, we really categorized it into a 4-phase process where we started with data collection, understanding who River Falls is today, the planning decisions and policy decisions that have informed creating the community that we have today, setting that base foundation. And then we went into phase 2 of developing goals and strategies. So where do we want to be as a community in the next 20 years? What are our goals for the future, and what might help us get there along the way? That brought us into phase 3, where we were then in our plan elements exploring what our opportunities and strategies are to help us achieve those goals that we had established for the community. And then finally working into plan recommendation and review, where we put all of that process together into a plan, brought it out to the community, and then have a plan here for us to discuss today. And as I mentioned, engagement was a key component of this process, and this really should be a community-focused plan. So a couple things we wanted to highlight here. Through mailers and other promotions, we had exposure to over 5,000 residents throughout this process, and really you could almost say that's 5,000 households when you consider that a lot of that includes utility mailers, postcards that went out to all of our households within the community. So depending on how many people were in a household, but we had a lot of exposure in the plans, making sure that we're trying to get the word out. But then we had really focused engagement into 3 phases that aligned with that 4-step process. So our first phase was that issues and opportunities, where we had over 300 interactions with individuals through our first open house or our community survey and pop-up events that we did through the beginning phases of this process. That really helped us solidify our goals and direction. What are the areas that our community is excited about? Where the issues that they have, and what can we be addressing through this plan? That got us then into our phase 2, probably the longest phase of engagement, where we were really interacting on those specific plan elements. So here we had almost 1,500 interactions with community members, from pop-up events, our walking and biking tours as part of the bike and pedestrian plan, stakeholder conversations over the summer of last year, and other virtual engagement activities. And so this phase, we were really focusing on what are some of the specifics in the housing realm or transportation realm that we need to develop strategies and solutions for. And then finally, phase 3 was our draft plan phase, the phase that just ended most recently. And actually tonight is really one of them, because it is an opportunity for public input, where we had over 100 interactions through our open house that was held here on February 9th in this very room, and then the community survey, and then also your staff did a great job of getting out and interacting and presenting the plan to a lot of community organizations as we were finalizing the plan as well. And really that input helped us solidify 6 key goals that really established where we were headed with the comprehensive plan. I won't read through the specifics of each of those, but it really allowed us to kind of identify 6 key areas. And it's great to see that these are already woven into the outdoor recreation plan and bike and pedestrian plan. You'll see a lot of these topic areas carried through as well. So we focused on a connection, both a social connection from our community, from people to people, but also connection with spaces and places and activities. That's important for us as a community. That we want to have a focus on livability, that we have access to that high quality of life, whatever that quality of life means for each of you. That we have access to our resources along the way, access to information and social services. Resource, again, is our next one there. That's more focused on our natural resources, that emphasis of the Kinney and our other natural resources within the community that we want to make sure that we have access to, and we're being good stewards of those resources. Partnerships are key to success. We can't do it all alone, so making sure that we're connecting with our partners to help us achieve success, and that we also have a focus on resiliency and sustainability, that we are thinking in the long term and wanting to make decisions that are going to have a positive long-term effect for the community. So then the comprehensive plan then breaks down into our 11 chapters, as noted here. And these do really align with the 9 required plan elements that I mentioned earlier, from our goals to our implementation action. The one element that's on this list that's not required by state statutes is that recreation element, with the importance of recreation and the connection to the outdoor recreation plan. We did include that as its own chapter within the comprehensive plan. But otherwise, other than the introduction, the other plan elements really align with what's required from state statutes. So I will go through a little detail of each of these chapters, but I just wanted to highlight kind of the beginning of the plan as well. Obviously, we start with an introduction. That's our executive summary. Why do we have this plan? What does it mean? How is it used? And then we get into our goals, which really is very specific to those 6 areas and those goal statements that I just identified, along with some of the key themes and connections to how those goals get woven into the rest of the plan. And then each of the plan elements then has their own chapter, and I'll go through each of those at a high level here. And then we end with implementation, which is really what are those action steps that we want to be taking moving forward. And of course, we have appendices at the end that's really focused in 3 buckets. One is our technical memorandums, which I'll talk about in the next slide, but then also highlighting some of our existing conditions through the community profile, and then a lot of our engagement summary information in Appendix C. So wanted to highlight quick on just a little bit of the format. We did have a goal of trying to make this a concise document and not too much of an overwhelming document, and so took a different approach of creating the plan element chapters, the actual content of the plan, where we're making sure to introduce the plan or the element, what goals are connected, what some context and overview of strategies and tools, but they need to be partnered and connected to the technical memorandums, which are in Appendix A. So that's where you're going to get a lot of more of the juicy detail that is maybe important to you as plan commissioners or staff, and some members of the public, but that's the area you go to if you really want to dig into some bigger detail. So generally speaking, they're about twice as long as the plan element chapter, but they really do need to be connected because there is some content in there that we should make sure we're looking at as we're making decisions as well. So it's maybe a little call to you as plan commissioners when you're making decisions down the road. But then getting into the content or context of each of the chapters themselves, I'll go through each plan element and just kind of highlight some of the key considerations or components that are included in each of the chapters. So from a housing perspective, we have a great housing needs assessment or study that was recently updated and helped us inform this plan, but we really, from a strategy perspective, really focused in 2 areas on looking at strategies and solutions for affordable housing. We heard a lot about that from the community and having access to affordable housing of different types. And then also using our missing middle, which is very much a planning term, but is that focus on different housing types that are kind of in the middle between your big apartments and your single family homes. And that this is an area that are some development typologies that people are really interested in at the moment, but also help us respond to affordability concerns. So whether that's our duplexes, our townhomes, multiplex, your 4plex or things like that. So just some tools and strategies in there for housing. And then our agricultural, natural, and cultural resources chapter, a lot to cover under one element, but looked in a couple areas in terms of our, so we developed a new concept of our green corridors and those recreational connections. So our green corridors are really highlighting some of our key resources and amenities within the community, from our floodplain, our steep slopes, our open spaces, and recognizing that network of resources that we create within the community, and trying to think about how we can be good stewards of those resources, but also build connections within those green corridors as well. And that's really where those recreational connections come in. This is a great space for us to be thinking about future parks or future trail connections throughout the community as well. We also have an emphasis on historic preservation, building from some of the great work that's already being done within the community, and then also a connection to local food access. Agriculture isn't a big focus for us as a city when we're thinking about the agricultural uses, but that local food access is really a way for us to be thinking about connections to agriculture, but also healthy lifestyles and choices for the community as well. Economic development is our next chapter. And here we kind of focused in 2 areas that were really specific to some of the engagement we heard in terms of we're doing a great job of attracting new businesses and we have growth within the community, but making sure that we don't forget about our smaller and local businesses and how we can support those within the community, whether that's on Main Street or in other locations throughout the community. But then also an emphasis on workforce development and attraction. It's great for us to bring new businesses into town, but if we don't have the workforce to support what they need, we run into some issues there. And so looking at ways that we can work with the colleges and the public school system to help us create workforce that can stay and grow within the community and some of those other things as well. From a transportation perspective, we considered all modes of transportation here. Obviously, the bike and pedestrian plan is a great resource that goes a few levels deeper into some recommendations that are great for the community's network and infrastructure. But this chapter, some highlights here focus on what are some transit options that we might have or could be thinking about within the community based on our current size and where we're headed. Thinking about those regional connections, how do we get to the Twin Cities or Madison or even Chicago, Milwaukee, and what are some of those bigger connections as well. And then we also introduced a city loop concept here within the transportation chapter that directly connects to the bike and pedestrian plan that really looks at some systems, some connected systems that really emphasize multimodal transportation and providing some loops and connections throughout the community. Then we have our utilities and community facilities chapter. Here we really looked at our utility planning and utility growth overall, sustainable infrastructure, but then also highlighted a few of the existing services and resources that we have within the community, whether that's, again, our utilities, like our 120 stormwater treatment structures, or our public services with our active police and fire departments, or our other resources like educational institutions, both at the university and public school system level, but also our library that continues to do a lot of great work in the community, or our recreation system that had almost 2,500 program participants in the last year. So highlighting some of that great work as well. Land use is one of those core components of the plan and is really the whole reason by state statute why we started with the comp plan. But there's a couple of key considerations in here that are very specific, obviously, to you as plan commissioners as you're making development decisions down the road. But a couple of those policy tweaks really kind of sit in 5 different areas here, starting with some development regulations and really looking at the plan guides us to take a look at the development regulations that we have today. Where do we need to make tweaks to help us achieve affordable housing or increase access to resources and some of those things? An emphasis on community connectivity, really bringing us back into the core and thinking about how we develop increased residential density. And you'll see that the last plan capped us at 12 units per acre, and now our high density category starts at 12 units per acre. So allowing us to just increase our development changes or opportunities and increasing that density within the core. We do have some updates to that urban area boundary. So holistically, we made some updates to the future land use plan in general, but also expanded that urban area boundary that we were using as a kind of growth boundary, and then have also introduced a lot of mixed use development at that category to really open up some opportunities for, particularly within our core, for how we might develop a combination of residential and commercial uses. Recreation, again, ties to our outdoor recreation plan, but we wanted to expand in the comprehensive plan as well, talking about things like recreational tourism that are a great opportunity. It's happening today, but in our opportunity to tie recreation to economic development and things of that nature. And then also an emphasis on public health here. Obviously, access to recreation in whatever form we choose is great for our physical health, but also supports our social and mental health as well. So highlighting components there as well. I'm almost through all the chapters. Intergovernmental cooperation is our next and final plan element. And this is really where we wanted to highlight some of our existing partnerships and the agreements and directives that are currently in place. So we focused on all levels of partnership, from all the way from federal partnerships down to our local level and what partners do we have, where do we connect with them, what plan elements are they connected with, and things of that nature. So we do get into implementation is the final chapter, but before we get into the details of that, I wanted to highlight some of the updates that we made to the comprehensive plan in the version that was presented to you. And these are updates that were made in response to comments that we received from the public or additional staff review and comment over the month of February. So to start out, we did make some updates to the future land use plan and the urban area boundary. I will go into, my next slide goes into the details. With that one, there is some increased density that we also looked at from a future land use perspective. So if you were to compare the future land use plan from the public review draft to the current draft, there's just a couple of areas where we increased that density from a lower category to a higher category. We did add some additional city details, particularly in the utility and community facility chapter, to make sure we were highlighting some of the great work and metrics that make us who we are today as a community. We included some reference to considerations to increasing the role of diversity, equity, and inclusion, particularly within economic development and our workforce development as a key strategy for a way that we can continue to support and grow that workforce. Our small area plans had a few updates, and there was also some additional narrative added specifically within the technical memorandums to just give a little bit more understanding of the purpose and direction of those small area plans. We tried to emphasize the connection to those technical memorandums a little bit more, and there's a section added after the goal overview within each plan element chapter that has a direct connection of what you can find within those technical memorandums and why you might want to look there. And then we also made some updates to the implementation plan. A majority of what you've seen before didn't change, but we'll talk a little bit about a couple of those updates here moving forward in the presentation as well. So we wanted to pause here quick because this is a little bit of an update from what we've seen, or you've seen before on the future land use plan. So we already talked a little bit about increasing the density in a couple of locations, but I think the biggest thing you'll see here is, well, we did a couple of things. We did remove, there was we had a park, open space, and conservancy category within the urban area, the area outside of city limits. We cleaned that up a little bit. There was a little redundancy there, so we've grouped some categories together so they match what's inside city limits as well. But the biggest change that we made is we did add the subdivision, the extraterritorial subdivision boundary to this, to the map, so you can see where that limit of jurisdictional authority does sit. But we created a new category called the rural preservation area, which is the area shown in yellow, tan, whatever color you see there, outside of our urban area boundary. So this area is primarily within Troy and River Falls Township. Now, the couple things to note here is that this, we did take that out to the subdivision control boundary and created this category to really serve as a preservation, to note that we would like to preserve this area in its future use until development occurs, and treating it as an area of separation between development within either town and the city. So kind of creating that buffer area and recognizing that we appreciate the existing uses in play. We also help to align with some of the preservation, agricultural preservation policies within either the town or either county from that perspective. So recognizing those existing agricultural uses there as well. So it's more of a recognition of those areas from that perspective. So is it okay if I pause for a question? So I know that's like a high level overview, but because this is a kind of significant change and new to all of you, I would just open if you have any questions for us about that.
So the idea is that those two areas in Troy and River Falls are the areas where the city can be expected to grow long term. So we don't want necessarily a lot of like low density single family to fill up that space before, if the city grows Okay, that makes sense. So preservation, I think that term may be a little wonky because you hear preservation and you think, oh, we're not going to build on it. It's going to be green. So, I mean, I get it, but that's maybe a weird term for it.
Sure. That's a great point. We talked a lot about what this category should be called. The one thing that helps us on the preservation standpoint is truly what authority we have. We don't have land, we have land use authority in the areas where our zone extraterritorial zoning extends. Subdivision is a little bit different, so it becomes even a little wonkier from that perspective. But some of the preservation terminology was brought in to help support some of the county's agricultural preservation work as well. So trying to help us align in that space as well. I think the piece that I would add on to this is, yes, this is a 20-year plan, but it's going to be updated in another 10 years. And unless some huge development boom happens, we're probably not even going to see the limits of the urban area boundary before this plan is updated again. So it just kind of helps us, it provides a tooling conversation as we're working with the townships as they, grow in those areas.
Was the new area based on public comment? Why did you bring it in so late?
Yeah, and I will let Amy add here if she has anything that I missed here, but this was really, as we were chatting through it there, when we heard from the public, there were, I talked to a couple people who are just outside of our urban area at the public meeting, and they were excited that they were kind of left as is a little bit. But it's developed as a way for us to have a little bit more of a tool and mechanism. So it's kind of a weird thing when we have the ETZ, the extraterritorial zoning, versus the subdivision and what control is where. So it's a way for us to kind of recognize a plan and a process for every area that we have some form of authority over. So it allows us to kind of look at that greater subdivision boundary, which is our broadest boundary, and provide some level of guidance there. So it was something that was a discussion with staff about, how do we do this and create a tool that will help us down the road. Yep. Okay. Well, then I will keep moving here. The last piece here on the implementation updates and activities. So I will note, and won't go through them in detail, but we did add a few actions of implementation throughout, a couple of the areas, but probably the biggest change that you will see is we wanted to make sure to highlight there's almost 100 implementation actions identified within the plan. So it's time to get to work. We got a lot of work to do. And that's just the comprehensive plan. That's not the outdoor recreation plan or bike and pedestrian plan. But we wanted to bring some level of priority to the plan as well. And so if you all remember, the implementation plan itself does not identify a priority or phase for when these actions should be completed, but instead we looked at the complexity of how complex is this activity to complete and what is the overall benefit in helping us achieve the goals that we established. And so what we did was went through each of the plan elements and pulled out 2 key actions that were identified as that level 3 benefit that we think are really kind of key activities to help us start moving in the right direction with the implementation of this plan. So from a housing perspective, we identified developing a housing action plan that allows us to really think about the specificities and roles and partnerships to helping us achieve our housing goals, and then also updating the zoning ordinance to support density and development that accommodates that missing middle housing. So these are 2 key things that we could really be are key for us to start making progress on the strategies, solutions, and goals that we identified throughout the plan. So I won't go through each of them in detail, but the intent here was, just identifying 2 of those key actions. It's not to say that these are the first 2 actions in each area that have to be completed, but there's some great grounding work that could happen. I'll use land use, for example. We have separate actions that refer to updating the zoning ordinance for residential and commercial and industrial. We called out residential here, but they are all of equal, importance and that high level of benefit as well. So that's my overview of the plan itself. What happens next? You do have a resolution before you if you are willing to to pass that, and then the plan itself would be adopted by ordinance through the city council. The first reading is scheduled for the March 14th city council meeting, and then the second reading at the last meeting of the month at March 28th. And if everything goes through there, we have the really fun work of then thinking ahead for implementation. So this was a great process to work through. There's a lot of work and effort from all of you as plan commissioners and our community, and have to applaud staff for all of their time and effort, not just the staff that's here in the room or even that reports to this building on a daily basis. This is a lot of great work put together, but it's an exciting time to think about the actions that we're going to take after this as well. So.
Okay, thanks, Stephanie. So I'm going to open up the public hearing. I'll close the planning commission hearing and open up a public hearing on the update to the city comprehensive plan to replace the 2005 comprehensive plan. And is there anybody in the audience that has any questions about this? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and reopen the planning commission hearing, and I'll take a motion on this.
I recommend we make a recommendation to the city council to adopt the city's comprehensive plan to replace the 2005 comprehensive plan.
Second.
Okay, first and second, questions, comments?
Well, now the hard part begins.
Yeah.
Writing the plan's kind of, I mean, it's not easy, but it's the easy part compared to
Yes.
what, 100 and, you say 100 something actions? Yeah, it's a lot.
I have a comment, and this is to you, Stephanie. Throughout this process, 18 months, you have been gracious, professional. You stood there for 30 minutes and talked without a note in front of you. And you've been a joy to work with. I know you have a baby at home and you went through COVID, and you just really are a stand-up person. So I know you thank the staff, but I'm thanking you.
Okay, anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. There again, I will close the, well, actually, Sam's gonna, Sam, where are you? There he is. Sam's gonna give us a little presentation on appeal to the denial of request for a certified survey map at 205 Huppert Street. So Sam will give us a little presentation on this, and then I'll open it up for a public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor and Plan Commissioners. My name is Sam Burns. I'll be presenting on the next agenda item this evening. Mr. Bill Huppert had a certified survey map that he applied for, which was rejected by the Community Development Director, and is seeking to appeal the rejection. A reminder before we begin, if the Plan Commission approves the appeal, the subdivision will be granted an appeal by the Plan Commission and then be referred to the City Council for final approval. If the Plan Commission denies the appeal, that applicant has no further recourse within the city for subdivision approval. So some background, Bill Huppert applied for a subdivision via a certified survey map, or CSM, for his property at 205 Huppert Street in the township of Troy. While Mr. Huppert's property is located in the township of Troy, it is within the City of River Falls extraterritorial subdivision zone. Mr. Huppert's approximately 6.5 acre property has two residential structures, a primary dwelling, and an additional legally non-conforming mobile home. Mr. Huppert is seeking to demolish the mobile home and replace it with a permanent structure for his son to reside in. Mr. Huppert's CSM application was rejected by Community Development Director Amy Peterson on December 28th, 2022, as is permitted by Section 16.10.200, subsection C of Municipal Ordinance. Mr. Huppert appealed this rejection to the Plan Commission as is permitted by Section 16.10.200, subsection D. So, just so we can see here, you can see the primary residence on the map right there, and the additional legally non-conforming mobile home right there. Section 16.10.135A mandates that no building permit or other permission be granted to construct a principal structure on any part of the pre-existing parcel that did not already contain a pre-existing structure. This was the reason the application was rejected. The intent to replace a mobile home with a permanent structure prevents the subdivision of the property. Prior to submitting a CSM, the applicant had numerous conversations with city staff where options were explored on how to meet the end goal of constructing an additional permanent structure on site. Throughout these conversations, the applicant was reminded that Section 1610-135A prevented the subdivision he was seeking. Staff provided the applicant with an alternative option of annexing his property into the city and subdividing the lot, as would then be permitted by 1604-40. The applicant opted to apply for a CSM while knowing ordinance prohibited it, with the stated intent of applying for a variance from the Plan Commission. Section 1604-60 of Municipal Code states that City Council and Plan Commission may grant variances from the provisions of this title, but only determining after that, 1, because of unique conditions of the subdivision involved, literal application of the title would impose a hardship. 2, the variance shall not violate the purpose of this title or the provisions of Chapter 236 of Wisconsin State Statute. The applicant applied for an appeal on the grounds that they have a unique parcel. The applicant states that the unique characteristics of the parcel are it lies within the town of Troy, the Troy Township administrative requirements, administrative boundaries, its current and future land use designations pursuant to the comprehensive plan, and its unique physical characteristics. Staff examined the stated grounds for appeal. Staff examined the stated grounds for appeal. State statute permits the creation of the extraterritorial zone by the city, and the current 1.5-mile buffer around the corporate limits include hundreds of parcels and individual lots. Staff found that being in the ETZ and subject to both the town of Troy and city of River Falls ordinance does not constitute a unique hardship. In the applicant's appeal narrative, he stated the current and future land use designation are not suitable for the site due to its physical composition. As previously stated, the original CSM application was denied because it conflicts with Section 1610-135A, which prohibits a permanent resident on the newly created parcel. This was communicated to the applicant, and disagreeing with the site's current and future land use designation does not count as a unique hardship and has no bearing on a CSM's approval or denial. Finally, the applicant cited the physical characteristics of the site as justification for a variance. However, outside of providing information as to how the physical characteristics were incompatible with the site's future land use designation, the applicant provided no examples of the unique physical characteristics that would result in undue hardship by the aforementioned subdivision's regulations being enforced. Staff has reviewed the applicant's request for an appeal of the rejection of their CSM application and their application for a variance. Staff has reviewed the applicant's claim that the administrative requirements of the Troy Township, their property's current and future land use designation, and their property's unique physical characteristics make them eligible for a variance, and found it to not demonstrate unique conditions or hardships that Section 1604-60 requires for a variance. Additionally, staff finds the applicant's justification for a variance to have no bearing on the original reason the CSM was rejected. The next steps for this appeal application is for planning commissioners to act on the enclosed resolution, which would deny an appeal request to approve a certified survey map for 205 Huppert Street. Planning commissioners have two options laid out by municipal ordinance. 1, they can reject the enclosed resolution and approve the appeal to permit a CSM. Staff would then draft a new resolution approving the CSM and would then go before City Council for final approval. Option 2 would be to deny the application for an appeal and end the options for a CSM. Regardless of the Planning Commission's decision, ordinance is clear that Planning Commission must provide justification for either approval or denial. With that, thanks for bearing with me. I'll defer back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thanks, Sam. So we'll close the planning commission hearing and we'll open up a public hearing. If there anybody that has anything on this. Yep, if you want to come up and state your name and.
Good evening, Attorney Andrew Nelson. I represent Mr. Huppert. I had submitted the letter on his behalf to the commission. Before we had started this entire process, I had emailed Mr. Burns about this specific request regarding the minor subdivision application, specifically whether or not 1604 .030 in the city's opinion would essentially apply. You know, that's just basically where the entire process started. There was, you know, basically the subdivision of the two lots will be considered a minor subdivision, which allows subdivision via certified survey map rather than a plot, provided all statutory criteria for the CSM are met, which they are. And we went through the process of needing to submit the application, knowing that under the reading of Chapter 16, it would likely be rejected by city staff. But if I can just provide a little bit more of an explanation as to why, in fact, this is such a unique situation. First of all, it has to do a little bit with the ability to obtain a waiver of subdivision approval jurisdiction, which is a completely different animal from a waiver of, or otherwise a variance granted under the subdivision ordinances. Because the first question to be answered was whether or not this property falls within the extraterritorial subdivision boundary or the extraterritorial zoning boundary, which, to be honest, I never knew that there was two different boundaries as it pertains to extraterritorial zoning. And certainly this is one of those unique circumstances where, you know, you sort of learn something new every day in this job. But there are two different zoning boundaries. One of them he's within, and the other one he's not within. And so the question first was whether or not he qualified for a waiver of subdivision approval jurisdiction, which would have essentially settled the matter right there. Unfortunately, because he doesn't fall within the zoning section, he doesn't qualify for that. So that was one of the dead ends that we ran into. The other dead end is in regards to the administrative requirements that the Township of Troy has. So the city, because there's already existing, and it is an existing home that's on a foundation, it's not a trailer. It is what could be considered a double wide, but it's placed on a foundation, and it is a non-conforming home at the time. Technically, because it is non-conforming, I believe that the staff's opinion is that he could essentially demolish that and rebuild it on that property. However, the town's requirements prohibit that without subdividing the lot. So the township says he has to subdivide this lot in order for him to utilize that space. He wants to sell it to his son. His son needs to have it in title so that he can apply and qualify for financing and then build a new home there on that lot. It would put this particular property to its highest and best use, certainly. There's the conflict between the town of Troy and then the city extraterritorial zoning. So to kind of hopefully give a brief summary of exactly why, you know, I'm here, why the application has been submitted. It is certainly a unique aspect, or there's a unique aspect to this particular parcel. Under 1604-060, the council, the plan commission may certainly grant a variance because of the unique conditions of the subdivision involved. The literal application of title would impose a hardship. There aren't many, there are quite a few lots that fall within this boundary, but there aren't many that are going to run up against this particular rock in a hard place. You know, the township says one thing, the city says something else. And so that is one aspect of the unique application of this particular lot. The other one, I take a little bit of umbrage against the recommendation from staff in saying that we've never presented any unique circumstances relative to the lot itself. We did do that. The Department of Natural Resources has a waterway that essentially cuts this 40 right in half from the southeast to the northwest. It's a significant size waterway. It's a drainage area that goes into the Sterling Ponds addition there and eventually flows to the Kinney, is my understanding anyway. But because of the nature of that property, there cannot be any additional development on a majority of that full 40-acre parcel there. And so that waterway forms the north and essentially north and northeast boundary of this particular lot. And so there is no additional development that can take place on that waterway. It's not permitted under DNR regulations. So that is another unique characteristic of this particular lot. And again, it creates a bit of a hardship there. Um, the I believe that there are two options for the Plan Commission to consider in regarding our appeal and our request for a variance. One is a finding that under these very limited circumstances, the minor subdivision section does apply, and we can divide the lot by CSM. It is less than 4 parcels, and so that it would apply. That is one option there. The other option is a variance is appropriate as to the 35-acre subdivision requirement because, again, of the unique circumstances associated with this particular lot. At the end of the day, Mr. Huppert, his family goes back a very long way in the community. This property falls on a road that was named after the farm that was once there, and he's attempting to utilize this space to its highest and best use. The idea that it would be right for commercial use, which is what the current comprehensive plan calls for, with the waterway going right through the middle of that 40, it's going to make it very difficult for use for commercial purposes. To grant this request makes a lot of sense for future use because it would provide essentially a natural buffer. It would keep that area free from additional development, and it's a nice buffer between the planned commercial use on the other side of the waterway, essentially, and the Sterling Pond residential development right there. I would ask that the Plan Commission consider granting this request for appeal, granting this request for variance under one of those two options anyway.
Thanks.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Nelson, I've got a couple questions. About the township, said that you must subdivide before you can rebuild this house. That's correct?
Yes.
Have you asked them to waive that requirement? Is that something that is waivable by them?
It is not, unfortunately.
Okay, and I understand the city's, offered the alternative of annexing that parcel to the city.
If that occurred, I've never been presented with that option.
Oh.
That I'm aware of.
Okay.
I never had the discussion with Bill that was part of it. I read through all of the emails, all of the correspondence between city staff and him over the past year and a half he's been attempting to do this. That was never one of the options for them.
Oh, so that
as
might.
far as I was aware.
Okay, so, but if the city did, well, I assume you'd talk with your client about that option if, in fact, it were presented to him.
Absolutely, yes. I would have no problem doing that because I think for sure then it would fall under the
Right.
minor subdivision
Right,
requirement.
yeah, and, well, yeah, and then the city would, of course, have more power to protect the waterway.
And
okay.
I'm not certain of as to the minimum requirements and the approvals from Troy either is involved with the annexation request.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And Sam, the property is contiguous with city limits, so it could be annexed, right?
It could be annexed, yep. And just to clarify the point on the annexation, we've had numerous conversations in person with Mr. Huppert over the past year and a half or so. We provided the opportunity to annex, so we've referenced that as a possibility, and each time he's deferred, stating the cost of connecting to sewer, city, and water. We have also said that, well, there's a component in the ordinance where you can defer 10 years to be fully connected to city and sewer and water, and that way he'd still be able to subdivide his property. He still declined to do so. So from that perspective, it might not be explicitly in the emails that Mr. Nelson has read, but it's something that has been discussed at length and declined to do so. I would like to just bring up a couple other things. The minor subdivision that was referenced, minor subdivisions aren't permitted in the extraterritorial subdivision. Just to be clear, that's why it's not considered an option to subdivide the property as is. But if Mr. Huppert were to annex into the city of River Falls, he then would be eligible for a minor subdivision. So thus, kind of the sticking point of where we are currently. Just really quickly regarding the current and future land use designation that was discussed and the physical characteristics that go along with it. All those facts, perfectly true. They're just not weighed when city staff approves or denies a certified survey map. The only reason why it wasn't considered, the only reason why it wasn't referenced in the or in the plan commission packet. So just a point there. I'm sorry, any other questions? I didn't mean to jump in.
Well, hang on, we're still in public hearing, so I want to make sure, is there anybody else in the audience has anything you want to say about this? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and we'll open the planning commission. And does anybody have any questions for Sam? Yeah, well, you can ask questions first and we can take a motion. Go ahead. Anybody? No? Okay, so we'll take a motion. Just,
I do.
yeah.
I move we approve resolution number, or is that? No.
2023.
Yeah, 2023-02, denying, a resolution denying an appeal for certified survey map variance.
Second.
Okay, first, second. Any questions, comments?
I just, I know we have to follow ordinance, but I find it very hard when a father who's owned a farm for as long as I know the Hupperts have, can't give to his son 3 acres so that they can build a home on it. And I realize between the township and us, it must just be a nightmare to try to work through to simply give your son some land. And I find that really harsh, that some kind of a solution can't be found.
Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I empathize with the Huppert situation. They're on the edge of the city and you know, under the township's regulations as well. But I think there does seem to me to be a potential solution here by annexation. So it's not like there's no exit from this situation.
Do we know what it would cost? I have no clue what it would cost to get electrical and water out there.
Sure. So there's actually, and this is based on some, not maybe up to the minute knowledge from my brain, but we did look at utilities, and there are utility connections out to Huppert Street or within a relatively short distance. And I don't want to speak for Mr. Huppert at all, but it's my recollection that he had told me that he was worried about the usage and his rates increasing as a result of being on city water versus being on septic and well. Again, don't want to speak for Mr. Huppert, but that is my recollection of the conversation we had and why he declined the opportunity to annex. But that is something, the opportunity to annex is something he could do independently as the property owner, and it would not require the approval of the town of Troy, if I'm correct. Certainly jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but.
And he can't be on well water if he's part of the city.
So like I referenced, there would be a 10-year grace period, I believe ordinance calls out, in which he would have that time to get connected to city water and sewer. And then in that time period, he'd be able to subdivide, but again, he declined to do so when I spoke to him.
Okay, anything else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, next move on to the specific implementation plan for 106-unit multifamily development, the current on Radio Road at Paulson Road. And Kendra is going to give us a little presentation on this first.
Good evening, Mayor and Plan Commissioners. Yes, I'm Kendra Elner, Planner, and I'm going to present the specific implementation plan submitted by Capital Investment Partners for a 106-unit multifamily development. And the SIP is the final step for development review for a planned unit development, or PUD, and includes detailed architectural, engineering, landscaping, and stormwater plans. City Council has voted to approve the general development plan on January 24, 2023. So the applicant is proposing the development on the southeast corner of Radio Road at Paulson Road, and the 106-unit multifamily development known as the current will develop 5 acres of the Thompson annexation property outlined in blue. The parcel has been divided by the certified survey map from the Thompson Heights development to the east. So the 106 unit development will consist of 4 residential buildings with a unit mix of 1 to 3 bedroom options, and the image shown is a rendering of one of the proposed buildings. So the site plan for the development shows 2 driveway accesses off of Radio Road, and the applicant is also proposing a fitness center, a tot lot, pet park, sidewalks connecting around the buildings and to Radio Road, constructing separate paved bicycle and pedestrian trail parallel to Radio Road, and will designate a nature trail around the wetland with the number of proposed on-site amenities, and specifically the additional trail connections. The applicant was granted flexibility for the 1-to-1 open space requirement. So the property management company will be responsible for the maintenance of the nature trail and streets and sidewalks on the site, but the city will plow the trail along Radio Road. So the municipal code requires specific implementation plans to be evaluated upon the listed criteria, and staff analysis on each of these conditions can be found in the meeting packet. City staff have examined each of the following conditions and have found there to be no concerns. So the specific implementation plan for the current will be reviewed during the March 28th City Council meeting. Upon Plan Commission's recommendation, and staff recommends forwarding the enclosed resolution to approving the SIP for the current to City Council with a favorable recommendation. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Mayor, for any questions or comments.
Yeah. Okay, I'll take a motion on this.
I move to approve the specific implementation plan and preliminary plat for the 106 unit multifamily development, the current on Radio Road, Paulson Road.
Second.
Okay, got a first and second. Questions, comments?
Is the gate, is the entryway on the south side of the property, is it gated? Looking at the image in the packet, the one to the, I guess, my left, that one. Is that a gate there, or is that just a regular entrance?
That there is no gate.
Okay.
In
I
this
just wasn't sure if it was like an
Nope.
emergency access only point or whatever, but it's just too open. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I think it might be a certain crossing or.
Crosswalk or something.
Okay, anybody else have anything?
Just to quick clarify, this is the motion and the resolution is just for the specific
Yep, just
implementation
right.
plan. There
Sorry, I
wasn't
missed
a
Yeah.
plat with this one.
Yep. Okay, next one. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next one is the specific implementation plan and preliminary plat for Oak Hill on South Apollo Road. This is with Twin Cities Land Development. And again, Kendra will give us a little presentation on this.
Thank you, Mayor and Plant Commissioners. So yes, I am presenting the specific implementation plan and preliminary plat submitted by Twin Cities Land Development for a 110 unit single family and 2-family development on South Apollo Road. The SIP is the final step for development review for a planned unit development and includes detailed architectural, engineering, landscaping, and stormwater plans. The preliminary plat creates the streets, outlots, lots, and easements for the new neighborhood. The City Council voted to approve the general development plan on October 25th, 2022. The applicant is proposing the development on the southwest of South Apollo Road and West Maple Street. The 110 unit development known as Oak Hill will develop 35 acres of the Wells annexation property outlined in blue. The 110 unit development will consist of 4 single family and 1 twin home product options at different price points. And the images you see are examples of one of the single family options and then the twin style home option. The site plan for the development shows 3 accesses off of South Apollo Road. Access will be mostly directed from West Maple Street to South Apollo Road, and the development will create a new road alignment with the Township Road on 879th Street to the northwest of the property. Notably, mostly 92 units will be located in the upper half of the property with a small cul-de-sac of 18 homes on the lower half, and the proposed development has requested flexibility from the R2 multiple family medium density based zoning designation to provide smaller lot sizes for the single family homes and smaller rear yard setbacks for 3 lots where the new residential street connects to the town road on the west side of the property adjacent to Rolling Hills Park. In exchange for the In exchange, the development will include approximately 9 acres of open space, sidewalks on both sides of the street, dedicated nature trail connecting the southern cul-de-sac to the northern portion of the development, and a public trailhead for the southeast corner for a future Foster Cemetery conservation trailhead. So the preliminary plat for the Oak Hill subdivision creates 110 single-family and 2-family home lots. It also creates 8 outlots throughout the development, and most outlots are designated for stormwater and steep slopes, while outlot 6 at the southeast corner will be designated for a public future trailhead for Foster Cemetery conservation area, and the drainage, utility, and trail easements have been denoted as needed, and streets are designed per the subdivision ordinance requirements. Final plat is to be submitted within 24 months that the preliminary plat is approved, and the developer anticipates to be submitting the final plat for the first phase this summer. And the development is anticipated to be built in 3 phases, with construction of all the homes to be completed by 2028. So municipal code requires SIPs and preliminary plats to be evaluated upon the following criteria, and staff analysis on each of the conditions can be found in the meeting packet. Staff have examined each of the following conditions and have found there to be no concerns. So the preliminary plat and specific implementation plan will be reviewed next during the March 28th City Council meeting, and staff recommends forwarding the enclosed resolutions approving the SIP and preliminary plat to City Council with a favorable recommendation. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Mayor.
Thanks, Kendra.
Thank you.
Okay, I will take a motion on this.
I move forwarding the resolution approving the planned unit development specific implementation plan for Oak Hills.
Second.
First and second, questions, comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next move on to proposal for annexation and rezoning for property located on County Road Highway U and County Highway M.
Just
And-
before we do that, so this one did have both the specific implementation plan
Yes.
and a preliminary
In the
plat.
current plat.
Yeah,
Both
so
of
did your
them.
motion include?
Yes, by motion.
Yep.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, and Emily's gonna give us a presentation on this one.
Great, thank you. So good evening. I'm Emily Shively, Assistant Director of Community Development. I'll be presenting on 2 proposed annexations in the same area on the west end of the city. The first is an annexation petition from Gary Moelter to annex 2 parcels on County Highway M and County Highway U adjacent to the Man Valley Corporate Park. So he has submitted a unanimous petition for annexation. So that's the easiest form of annexation when everyone who lives there, owns the land, wants to come into the city. The parcels consist of approximately 48.61 acres, and the request is to annex them from the town of Troy to the city of River Falls. The Plan Commission's role in annexations is to provide a recommendation to the City Council on land use and zoning aspects of the proposed annexation. There are 2 factors for the Plan Commission to consider in determining whether to recommend an annexation. First is the location contiguous to the city, and is the present or proposed use of the area proposed to be annexed compatible with the uses in the city adjacent to the territory proposed to be annexed. So this image shows land that is in the city as highlighted with a yellow overlay, and the subject parcels are contiguous to the city boundary. At this time, there is no proposal to develop the properties. The applicant intends to continue the agricultural use of the land until there is a business that would like to develop the land and be part of the Man Valley Corporate Park. The council adopted a concept plan for the Man Valley Corporate Park in June of 2022, which shows the subject area as intended for corporate park development with an option for mixed use along County Highway M. As there are no current proposals for development, staff is recommending applying a zoning classification of agriculture district to allow for the continuation of the existing use until such time as development occurs. So in summary, the proposed annexation area is contiguous to the city boundaries, and the near-term continued use of the property for agricultural purposes and the future use of the property for corporate park or mixed-use development is anticipated to be compatible with the surrounding land uses. Staff recommends that the request for annexation and the application of an agricultural district zoning classification for the subject properties be forwarded to the City Council with a favorable recommendation. And with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Okay, I will take a motion on this.
I move that the annexation petition for the Moelter properties be, go forward to the city council.
Okay, first and second, questions, comments?
Could you go back to the colorful, Man Valley? Okay, where is the property within there? Is it that
So
gray and
here-
pinky?
Here is County Highway U, County Highway M, so it's basically right. Oh. Thank
There we
you.
go.
There you go.
Technology. Great.
So it's that.
Visible to me and invisible to you.
Yeah.
So the Moelter properties are basically right here. in
Yeah,
this
that's what I thought.
southwest
Okay.
corner.
Anything else? All in favor?
I
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and Emily will give us a presentation on the next one. This is a proposal for annexation and rezoning on a portion of city-owned property on County Highway M.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this one is just to the east of the one we were looking at previously. So the city recently purchased this parcel adjacent to the Man Valley Corporate Park on County Highway M. The western portion of the parcel is proposed to be annexed to the city. The easterly portion of the parcel containing the farmstead will remain in the town. So again, the Plan Commission's role is to provide a recommendation to the council on land use and zoning aspects of the proposed annexation. So as in the previous case, we're looking at two factors, contiguity and compatibility. So again, the yellow highlighted area is what is in the city currently, and so this shows that the proposed annexation area is contiguous with the city boundary. The eastern portion of the proposed annexation area contains an existing drainage way, and that is intended to be preserved. The western portion of the proposed annexation area would be marketed for residential development, and those uses are anticipated to be compatible with the surrounding area. Here again is the concept plan for the Man Valley Corporate Park, and now that I know how to show you where this area is,
exactly what I was going to ask you.
right here. So this is the area that would be proposed for conservancy zoning, and then the western portion of the proposed annexation area to have an R3 multifamily high-density residence district to provide the greatest flexibility for future residential development in that location. So again, in summary, the proposed annexation area is contiguous with city boundaries. The proposed open space and residential uses are anticipated to be compatible with the surrounding uses. And staff is recommending that the proposed annexation and the application of an R3 residence district and be applied to the western portion, with the conservancy zoning classification be applied to the eastern portion, and that this be forwarded to the city council with a favorable recommendation. I'll turn that back to you now.
Thanks, Emily. Okay, I'll take a motion on this.
I move we proceed with the proposal for annexation and rezoning of a portion of city-owned property on County Highway M.
Second.
First and second, questions or comments?
I have one, raising my hand like I'm in school. With those, it looked like on both of these annexations, the homesteads were staying in the townships. And I mean, I guess those homeowners, property owners know that the development plans are for this area is fairly high density housing or mixed use. So I assume at some point they will recognize they're going to be surrounded by fairly high density residential uses.
So on the Moelter annexation that we looked at previously, there are no existing dwellings on the property coming into the city. It's all just agricultural use.
Yeah.
But to the southwest of that property are existing homes.
Mhm.
So they are not part of the annexation proposal. So, but the future land use that the city is anticipating may be mixed use in that area. Again, with any future land use or development, that won't occur until there's sort of a landowner that's willing to partner with a developer to make a project feasible.
Oh, and in this parcel, the the city owns the existing homestead as well, and there's agreements with the resident about how that's gonna be handled in the future.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Emily, can you just stay up there and give us a planning update?
Yep, you've done great hanging through this really long meeting, so thank you for that. So very brief planning update. Just noting that last month in February, the council approved the specific implementation plan and final plat for Thompson Heights. So that is going to be getting ready to go. And then just wanted to highlight that our next meeting date changed from Tuesday because of the election on April 4th. So we will be meeting on Wednesday, April 5th. If you have any questions, that's what I have for you.
Anybody have anything for Emily? No? Okay.
I don't know if this is a time to bring it up, but I'm fine with the Derrick construction. But once Saturday Homes comes into play, and now we do have this cross back and forth, I will be looking for a very specific, how are we going to handle those two driveways facing one another, not just enhanced. I will want to know what are we going to do, because I can totally see someone really getting hurt out there. But they haven't come back, have they? Saturday townhomes?
We anticipate them
Yeah,
applying
okay.
for the next phase.
I thought we haven't seen them for a while, but okay.
Move to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
So I'll take my
Getting
book
good
home
at it.
here.